Rome is burning, its once eternal glow swallowed by smoke and silence. No legions marched to save her. The eagle banners lie forgotten in the ashes. The streets that once thundered with a million voices now echo with emptiness. Looters prowl the ruins, while desperate families flee through unguarded gates. At the Forum, beggars sleep between cracked columns where senators once ruled the world. The aqueducts are dry, their arches shelter thieves instead of water. It is the year 476 AD, and the impossible has happened. The Western Roman Empire has fallen. Romulus Augustus, the last emperor, deposed by the barbarian Odo Acer, he sent the crown to Constantinople, ending 5 centuries of Roman power. With that single gesture, 500 years of Roman civilization vanished into memory. The world that once ruled continents now lay in ruins, its heart broken and its people scattered. Historians would call what followed the Dark Ages, a time when civilization itself seemed to vanish beneath centuries of loss and silence. But why did Rome fall? For 15 centuries, the question has haunted every scholar. It was not a single disaster that brought down the empire, but a storm of them: politics, war, greed, decay, and time itself. In the 3rd century, 50 years of chaos tore the empire apart. More than 20 emperors were murdered or slain in battle, each one replaced by another desperate claimant. Inflation devoured the economy, as the silver content in coins was reduced again and again, until money itself became worthless. Silver coins lost their shine and their value. Civil wars burned the provinces while merchants abandoned the roads that once fed an empire stretching from the deserts of Syria to the forests of Gaul. Beyond the Rhine and the Danube, shadows moved. Tribes the Romans called barbarians, the Huns, Vandals, Visigoths, Ostrogoths, all pressing against Rome's fragile borders. Armies that had once conquered the known world now struggled to defend it. Fortresses along the frontiers fell one by one as entire provinces slipped from imperial control. The proud legions of old, disciplined and loyal, were gone. By the 5th century, even the army was no longer Roman. The eagles that once conquered the world now flew above hired swords from distant lands. Germanic and Gothic mercenaries fought for pay, rather than for Rome itself. When those mercenaries chose to seize power, no one remained to stop them. The Senate, once the proud heart of Roman authority, had become little more than a shadow of its former self, its decrees ignored, its halls crumbling. For the common people, the collapse came like a storm with no warning. The empire that promised peace brought only hunger and fear. The roads that once connected worlds became paths of danger and death. Bandits ruled where soldiers once patrolled, merchants dared not travel, and trade stopped. Cities starved, markets emptied, and the glory of Rome faded like a dying fire. Famine followed war, and even the eternal city itself could no longer feed its own. Rome, once a million souls, now only whispers among ruins. The aqueducts ran dry, the fountains silent. The heartbeat of civilization stopped. Bridges collapsed, roads decayed, and the empire's veins turned to dust. The baths that once echoed with laughter fell into ruin. Statues of gods and emperors were toppled and melted for coin. Rome's markets, once filled with spices, silk and gold, stood empty under crumbling roofs. The city that ruled the world became a ghost of stone and memory. Constantinople, Carthage, Alexandria, all the jewels of Rome faded in time, their light dimmed by invasion and neglect. Without emperors, the empire's lifeblood, taxes, trade and trust, vanished overnight. Aqueducts dried, theaters silenced, and citizens fled to the countryside seeking food and safety. Cities became tombs, their marble stolen to build huts and fortresses. The grandeur of the past became the foundation of the desperate present. Christianity filled the void where Rome's gods once ruled. The Pantheon, once home to all gods, became a church of one. Temples fell silent, as churches rose in their place. Libraries burned, scrolls rotted, and knowledge vanished into darkness. Centuries of wisdom gone, lost to flame, time, and indifference. But amid the ruin, a faint light endured. Monks began to copy what they could by candlelight. They became the last guardians of a dying world's memory, transcribing the thoughts of Plato, Cicero, and Virgil, while the world outside forgot their names. In Ireland, far from the ruins and wars, they kept the light of knowledge alive. From the ashes of empire, faith became the new power, and parchment became the new sword. Barbarian kings built their thrones on Roman bones. Visigoths ruled Spain. Vandals took Africa. Franks forged Gaul. Ostrogoths held Italy for a time. The dream of one empire gave way to 1,000 warring tribes. The unity that had once bound 3 continents shattered into countless kingdoms. Yet in their laws, their cities, and their faith, traces of Rome remained. Latin fractured into new tongues. Italian, French, Spanish, born from Rome's ashes, carrying its rhythm and soul into the languages of the future. Civilization had fallen, but its echoes refused to die. The empire's citizens, once literate and cultured, forgot how to read their own history. Books turned to dust, and knowledge became a secret language whispered by monks and priests. In the countryside, peasants lived and died without ever hearing the name of Rome. The empire's unity dissolved, replaced by countless rival kingdoms. Roman law gave way to tribal justice, a world ruled by vengeance, gold, and the sword. Where once there was citizenship, now there was only allegiance to chieftains and kings. Latin, once the voice of empire, fractured beyond recognition. Britain lost Latin completely, its people speaking the harsh language of invaders from across the sea. The light of literacy dimmed until only the church guarded its flame. Then came another blow, a plague that would sweep away millions. The Justinian plague struck in 541, the first great wave of death since the empire's rise. From Africa to the Alps, entire villages vanished overnight. Fields lay barren, trade collapsed, and faith became the only comfort left to the survivors. Coins disappeared from markets, replaced by barter and survival. Cities once proud became silent graves. Even the secret of Roman concrete, the magic that built the empire's immortal monuments, was lost to time. Aqueducts crumbled, glassmakers vanished, and bridges fell into rivers no one dared to cross. Life became short, brutal, and uncertain. The dream of Rome had turned into a nightmare of survival. Violence ruled, kingdoms rose and fell, and the roads became rivers of blood. Viking raids and tribal wars tore apart what little peace remained. Europe became a patchwork of fear and fire, where power was fleeting and death was near. Yet amid the ruins, a spark of Rome refused to die. Barbarian kings began to imitate the empire they had destroyed. They built churches of stone, wrote laws in Latin, and dreamed of unity once more. Scholars gathered again, priests taught from faded texts, and the memory of order began to stir. One man would dare to wear the crown again, Charles the Great. In the year 800, a new empire was born from Rome's ashes. Charlemagne's dream was not conquest, but resurrection. The church crowned him emperor, reviving the ghost of Rome. The eagle of empire spread its wings again, not to conquer, but to remember. From faith and ruin, a new Europe began to rise. The monks who once copied books in silence became the architects of a new world. The spirit of Rome survived not in marble, but in memory. Monasteries became the heartbeat of a wounded civilization. They preserved knowledge, grew food, healed the sick, and taught those who would listen. In cold scriptoria, under the dim light of candles, ancient manuscripts of philosophy, medicine, and science were copied and preserved, line by line. The wisdom of Greece and Rome, fragile and fading, was carried through generations by hands stained with ink. In their hands, the wisdom of Greece and Rome was kept alive by a fragile line. These quiet scribes became bridges between the ancient and the future world. The barbarian kingdoms slowly transformed under the weight of what Rome left behind. The conquerors who had once brought fire and ruin began to build instead of destroy. Kings sought legitimacy through the church, and faith replaced conquest as the measure of power. Roman law returned, reshaped by faith and necessity, guiding the governance of new realms. Latin endured, binding Europe through church, school, and scripture, serving as the language of scholars, priests, and diplomats. Agriculture revived as the land once ravaged by war began to yield crops again. Trade awoke along the old Roman routes that connected villages and kingdoms. Cities began to breathe once more as artisans, merchants, and travelers returned. New tools, new faith, and new order emerged, yet the bones beneath were still Roman. The Carolingian world became Europe's first heartbeat after centuries of silence. Charlemagne's empire, though short-lived, rekindled the idea of unity and learning. His schools and monasteries revived literacy, teaching the sons of nobles to read and think in the language of Rome. In time, the fragments of empire gave birth to nations. The Latin tongue evolved into songs of poets and languages of kings, transforming into Italian, French, and Spanish, each carrying the rhythm of the ancient world. The Roman dream changed form, but never truly died. Even in ruin, Rome continued to teach about power, pride, and impermanence. Its shattered walls and forgotten roads became lessons in endurance and humility. By the 12th century, a new fire burned, the fire of curiosity and rediscovery. Universities rose in Paris, Bologna, and Oxford, bringing back reason where faith had once ruled alone. Roman law was rediscovered, studied, and reshaped into the foundations of modern justice. Trade flourished once again, along the routes that had once been Rome's arteries, this time carrying not legions but ideas. The towns that grew beside these roads became centers of learning, art, and ambition. The Renaissance began as memory, Rome's memory, awakening once more. Painters, sculptors, and thinkers looked back to Rome and saw the future reflected in its broken columns and faded frescoes. From the ashes of empire came rebirth, not of conquest, but of mind. Rome's ruins became classrooms, its failures became lessons in endurance. Artists studied the anatomy of ancient statues, engineers rediscovered the secrets of domes and arches, and scholars read Cicero and Virgil as though speaking to ghosts. Even the concrete that once defied time whispered secrets to new builders, who used those lessons to shape cathedrals and palaces that reached toward heaven. Europe was learning again, remembering what was lost. Science, reason, and art walked again among the ruins. The empire that had died 1,000 years before was alive again in spirit, carried forward by those who refused to let its memory fade. The Roman mind, disciplined, rational, curious, and unyielding, had survived every fall. From empire to faith, from chaos to reason, civilization endured and evolved, drawing strength from the wisdom of its ancestors. But history remembers Rome not only for its triumphs, but for its warning. Power built on arrogance always falls, no matter how vast or mighty. Progress without virtue collapses beneath its own weight. Civilization is not immortal, it must be protected and renewed by every generation. Institutions that seem eternal can vanish in the span of a single lifetime. Progress can be undone, comfort can turn to hunger, order can decay into chaos. Rome's fate reminds us that no civilization stands forever unless it guards its own principles. The fall of Rome was not just history, it was a mirror. It shows us that power fades, but resilience endures. Even after empire, war, and plague, humanity rebuilt. The farmers who tilled ruined fields, the monks who wrote by candlelight, and the mothers who taught their children hope all kept civilization alive. They planted seeds of recovery in the soil of destruction. Their courage and endurance became the foundation of the world that followed, the quiet heroism that turned ruin into renewal. The fall of Rome was not the end of civilization, it was its test. From ruin rose resilience, from darkness came light. Every fall carries the seed of rebirth, and from Rome's ashes, the world we live in began to form. Its law, its language, its spirit remain alive in every corner of our civilization. Its influence can be found in the words we speak, the laws we obey, and the architecture that still defines our cities. The empire may have fallen, but its heartbeat still echoes through time. Every road we walk, every word we speak, carries the ghost of Rome. The story of Rome reminds us that nothing built by man is eternal, but through memory, meaning survives. Rome burned, but from its ashes came the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the modern age. The fire that consumed Rome forged the world we call our own. 2303